same for you. People always looking at me like she ain't got a clue. Yeah, I'm corny as they come, but I'm pretty deep. Marching at the sound of his tongue, then I hit the knees. I'm unpopular, yeah, I'm unpopular. She's unpopular, yeah, she's unpopular. It's unpopular, yeah, it's unpopular. It's unpopular, it's unpopular. What's up, Unpop, and welcome back to another one. If this is your first time watching, welcome to Unpopulr, where I talk about how unpopular I am, unpopular my thoughts and opinions are, and how unpopular thoughts and opinions are for other Christians. So, like I say before, I am pretty different and very unusual. So stick around if you like it. You've been told. I have a guest for today's show, and my guest for today's show is someone who I think is like really brilliant and like spiritually intelligent as well, and will get your body fit and lit just as much as your spirit. Like, that's what I love about her. She's so well-rounded, like in the natural and in the spiritual, and I am very honored to have her on the show. I am talking about none other than the amazing Alexandra. I call her Frenchie, so it's really weird when I'm like, wait, is it Alexandria? I just been calling you Frenchie for so long.
You have been, yes. So remember, that was like the name when I first moved up here to Baltimore. That was the name everyone was giving me, was Frenchie. So I embraced it. It's you, Yori. So I embrace anything.
I was like, are you still going by that? Can I still call you that? What are we doing?
I haven't. You are the first person who's called me Frenchie in a minute. I haven't even heard that name. It's been a very long time. Yeah. Most people now call me Alexandra. So Frenchie, okay. Alexandra, it brings back memories when people call me Frenchie. So
okay. I was gonna say, but if you need me to just say Alexandra, that's what your girl will do.
Whichever one works. Whichever one.
Okay, cool. So, you knew that I had shared with you a little bit ago that I felt like the guy was positioning me to change the structure of my podcast. And with the change of that structure came the change of the name and so many other, really not change, but kind of evolving. And AKATA, we're still having that conversation. It's just lengthier. We're video now, and it's kind of diving deeper into different divides that need to be bridged, and also discussing more of what the Lord has placed in us. And I know the Lord has placed in me wanting to bridge that gap. And it's like, well, if that's what he's placed in me, but what has he placed in my guest? And so I want to talk about that too. And so it goes beyond AKATA, and now we are Unpopulr. And we'll start there. We've already talked about it a little bit on the earlier episode that we had you on, but talk to us again about have you heard the word AKATA? Like you obviously have, because we had you on, but now that once you learned everything that you learned, when you had talked to the host, what was kind of your response? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, it was all completely new to me because specifically the African culture itself. I have a lot of like Ghanaian and Nigerian friends. And so remind me of what the word meant, because now I was like, oh man, I can't even remember what the word meant.
So it primarily is being used on African Americans who may not like know where they are from the continent.
Yeah. And so for me, I just, thinking about the word itself, I thought about the differences in how we view African Americans and African culture in general. And so, coming from a household where my parents are Caribbean, and I've experienced where, because if I'm not mistaken, AKATA specifically, the definition specifically is talking about how Africans, is it viewing African Americans, how they viewed African Americans specifically, and almost like a slang, right? Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll also add that people typically find the definitions online that show it means like wild fox or stray cat and things like that.
Oh, okay. Okay. And
Mhm.
so, growing up, in a Caribbean household, my parents are Haitian, and so that actually made me think of and reminded me of how my parents viewed and how
Mm.
we culturally viewed African Americans, right? And or the African American diaspora itself specifically, and it was never a I didn't sense it was a good word. And so it was never a good view on culturally on the African American people. And so I remember having friends come over, and hopefully I'm in the same realm. I feel like I'm kind of deviating a little bit, but
No,
I
you're
remember
fine.
having African American friends come over, and it was always this thing of make sure you watch them, make sure you watch them around the house, make sure you're keeping an eye on them, make sure that
Mm.
you're not. It was
Mm.
and this reputation of them not being educated, and this reputation of them being low socioeconomic status, things like that.
Mm.
And it really
Wow.
it tainted my view of the Black African American. And when I moved to Baltimore City, because I'm from North Carolina, and when I moved to Baltimore City, which is a 63% African American city, very Black,
Mhm.
I specifically moved because I wanted to learn the people myself. I did not
Mm.
want to continue to receive information or insight, opinion, whatever, from my parents on the African American people. I wanted to
Wow.
experience them for myself. And I remember when I was praying for the Lord, about when I was praying to the Lord about Baltimore City specifically, that's what I was praying about. I was like, I
Wow.
want to experience these people for myself,
Wow.
and fell in love with them. So when I think of that word, when we did the first interview, I was like, oh, this is so interesting, because I remember going, being raised with this stigma or this judgment about people, and not even just African Americans, but African and Hispanic, and just like different ethnicities and backgrounds in general. And I was like, I don't want that anymore. I don't want to have that judgment on people anymore. And
Mhm.
so I know I deviated a little bit, but I that
No,
just made
not at
me.
all. Not at all.
Yeah, that's that when you brought that word back up, that's exactly what I thought about.
I didn't know that. I First of all, good on you for that. Like, that's the fact that you were intentional, like, you knew something was off and you
Mhm.
did something about it. And I was
Yep,
just talking to someone about that, I think today. It's just like when you become an adult, you especially if you're a Christian, you have to make the conscious decision of like, okay, this is the information that's been given to me,
yeah,
but I feel like the Holy Spirit is saying something else. You have the decision to either keep going in that direction
right,
or
right,
correct yourself and those around you or whatever he's calling you to
exactly.
do. So you intentionally decided, I'm moving to Baltimore, or I'm going to be in this space where I'm around African Americans and I can experience this for myself instead of for
Right.
secondhand information.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Complete opposite of what I was told, by the way.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, of course, there were, I was raised in an all white town, and my family I was popular because I was the only Black, student in my class
Mm.
for years. And then when I met other Black students and friends, and some of what my parents said were right, but when you're thinking about culturally a system in which everyone is saying the same thing about a people, right? And almost like you start to carry what people say. It's like word cursing, right? You start to carry that.
Mhm.
And but there was something about me that always saw better. And even if it was said that African Americans are, what was one thing that my parents would say? They would say that they were lazy, for example. Even if it was that they were lazy, um, it wasn't necessarily that they were lazy. I saw that opportunities were limited to them because of the fact that they were African American. And I was in an all white town,
That
right?
part.
And so they also received the oppression, right? Oppression. And it was just
Mm.
a lot of things. And so, yeah, I knew not only because I know that I'm called to the city, but I just knew that moving here to Baltimore City was going to be the best thing for me when it came to embracing the African American culture, and even like I mentioned earlier, the other ethnicities and backgrounds and races, because we're there is no color as believers. We don't see color. We
Mm-hmm.
see people. We see
Mm-hmm.
hearts. We don't see the black, white, Hispanic, African, Caribbean. We don't see that. We see
Mm-hmm.
people. And when the Lord said, love your neighbors, that's his second, actually, as equivalent in commandment to loving God. He didn't say love black people
Mm-hmm.
only,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? He said love your neighbor. It wasn't a specific race there. And
Yeah.
so I've always, I've always, I've never saw race. I really never have. I've
Mm-hmm.
never saw it. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna pause really quick because I didn't realize my laptop because I moved rooms. So let me grab the charger real quick.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Uh-oh. Here we go.
All right. Yeah. You know, I'm glad that you say that. And when you say that, I know you mean that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you, here's what other people hear when they hear that though. Well, when they hear I don't see color, especially when it comes from white people. And again, I
Right.
know this is not what you are saying. I want to be
Yeah. No,
very clear.
I know where you're going. I know where you're going. Yeah.
That is also, it has been, and I believe it is, it has been also been a cop out of
Right.
the racism that needs to be addressed.
Right.
It's a cop out to say, well, we don't see color. Well,
Yeah.
clearly you do. And not only that, God created different cultures for a reason. So it's actually okay to see color. But I know
Right.
what you mean.
Right.
Um, and I actually am trying to be more like that. Actually, I'm really trying to not see people just for their culture. That's what I hear you saying. Like, I don't see them for just for their culture. You see the humanity of a person. They're a human
Right.
being, period.
Mhm.
We're all equal in that
Right.
way.
Right.
But there is something beautiful about having multiple cultures because that's, you know what I'm saying?
Most
Like,
definitely.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
So,
For sure. I agree with
yeah,
you on that 100%. And I will add on to that in the sense of, yes, there are different nations, right? The Bible talks about the different nations, the different types of people, and to piggyback on you, the different cultures. And of course, I embrace everything when it comes to that piece. When I, like, you actually understood me when I said, as humans, in the sense of favoritism, in the sense of, equity, in the sense of equality and opportunity. I don't
mhm,
necessarily discriminate in a sense.
mhm,
And
mhm, mhm.
so, and even when it comes to, friendships, relationships. Now, culturally, I always pay attention to culture, right?
Hmm,
Because, one who has experienced different cultures, now that I have been in a though it is predominantly African American city, I've also been able to, sit at tables with different people and different types of people and from different countries and things like that. At the end of the day, people in their cultures have certain habits that I'm aware of. It's like, okay, I
sure,
peep this, I
sure, sure,
peep where
sure.
you're going there, and I discern, and then you make the necessary steps in correcting it or addressing it, however way. But at the end of it all, embracing people for people, as I mentioned, is very important, because when the agenda is to make it about solely about race. That's
Right.
the agenda. The agenda is to
It goes
divide.
beyond. It goes
Oh yeah,
exactly.
it's a deeper thing, right? You know it, right? And so the agenda is for there to be division. The enemy wants division. He doesn't want us to be partnering with, being black people partnering with white people, being Hispanic partnering, vice versa. He wants there to be division, and that's why anytime our country goes through these humongous racial and oppressive periods, what's the first thing that happens? Division.
Mm-hmm.
Completely. You have,
Mm-hmm.
white people doing this or black people doing, and they purposefully, he purposely does it. He'll have the white cops killing the black cops, like, or the black people. Like, it doesn't happen on a regular day, on a regular
Mm-hmm.
basis. We'll highlight it just to cause division. And so, yeah, it's I'm against the division. I'm against the division because we need each other. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny, this is not what we're talking about, and we're not even gonna get into this, but I see that with politics more and more, honestly. And I
Right.
stepped away from news and journalism and all of that because it was a lot. But
A lot.
I I see that more and more with the blue and red. And I'm like, y'all don't really realize that there's evils happening on both sides. And we are just
Right.
making it seem like, oh, nope, red is just so wrong. It's blue.
Right.
It's like, so y'all
Right.
don't see evil on both sides though? Like
Exactly.
extreme ones, not small, like, oh, it's minuscule
Exactly.
and theirs is larger. It is equal as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
But I'm not
It's
gonna
yeah,
I'm not gonna get
girl,
into
that's a
because
whole nother can of
I
worms.
know because I'm really not I've pulled away purposefully
Right,
from a lot of that. So I'm not even well versed on it to make it seem like I am. I'm not. Intentionally. But if I were I would be saying some things that nobody would be
right,
comfortable with. But
right.
um what is when it comes to divide, what's one thing that you've seen? You're saying that you're Haitian American, or would you I don't know if you would label yourself that way.
Yeah, I would
Um,
first generation Haitian American.
mhm, first generation Haitian, and yeah, what kind of divide have you seen in the Black community? I mean, you spoke a little bit about kind of like what you learned from family and how you kind of
Right.
stepped out of that. But what have you personally okay, have you personally had interactions with African Americans where they treated you a certain type of
Yeah.
way? Um, or vice versa. Like, did you firsthand see Haitians like go in on African Americans? And again, you already spoke to like laziness and things like that, but
Right,
do you
right,
have any
right, right.
specific situations that you could remember?
Oh my gosh, yes. Because and one of the things that I'll say is that the Caribbean, growing up in a Caribbean household, it was very strict, right? So the way I talk, the way I act, um, the being raised that way made me a perfectionist and a performer. And so when I would step in rooms where there was a bunch of African American, especially women, it would always be like, "Oh, who are you?"
Mm,
Right? You coming in here postured well, speaking well. Where are you from? I'd get that a lot. I would be rejected a lot, and until this day, um, always asking me, "Where are you from?" Like, and it's never a, "Oh, where are you from?" It's always like, "Where are you from?" Like, talking like this, carrying yourself like this. And they don't even have to say it. You can discern it and you can see it all over their face. Like, they just be like, and so I've had to learn to, one of the things the Lord, because when I say, Yuri, I went through such severe rejection with it. I had to learn, I had to pray um, for God to teach me how to guard my heart and not
mhm.
take everything personal,
Oh my
um,
god.
and
Whew.
not to let people's insecurities dictate how I even viewed myself. And so I would, it's almost like you're praying for God to guard your heart and then for thick skin to not care, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to entertain the enemy. I won't entertain those demons. And so I just, you learn to be confident in yourself. You learn to be confident, and I've embraced more now the way my upbringing was. I used to question, I'm like, man, why am I like this for real? Why do I talk like this? Why do I act like this? Lord. And of course he's dealing with the perfectionism and the performance, because there's the spirit of performance will make you think that you have to even perform for God. And that was always
Mhm.
right. I felt like I needed to do more for God. There's nothing I can really actually do for God to be
Yeah.
a better daughter, in the sense I'm just a daughter. He said that, right? And it's solid. That's it. And so yeah, I had to learn to embrace me even as I stepped in rooms where I knew that though we were the same face, I wasn't
Mhm.
going to probably be accepted because of my demeanor, because of my, they would say, "You're very stoic, Alexandra. Like you carry yourself
Mm.
um, very firmly," and which I would always, I was like, man, that is so interesting because I think I'm the most immature person in the world.
I definitely don't get that from you, but I'm not always around you, obviously, like, in those
They would tell me
spaces.
that. Yeah, they told me that, and they'd
Hmm.
say that they would say I was kind and jovial and personable, but it was always this thing about how I would carry myself. They would say things like, you walk in the room with authority. I'm like, good, because that is God's authority, right? However, I would sense the jealousy, I would sense the envy, and it would make me feel rejected,
Yep.
right? I mean, and then of course there were seasons where I also put a mask on and acted like I was, fine when I really wasn't. But in all actuality, I know that I carry, the glory of God. And so when I step in rooms where people's insecurities will be like, whew, I could feel it and see it immediately. But
Mhm.
my response in the past would be, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. Why don't they like me? What did I do? And I would try to change who I was. But I'm learning now to embrace who the Lord has made me to be and to know that I'm a glory carrier. And so if I step in rooms and that is the case especially with African Americans, because it was worse with African Americans than it was with
Wow.
Caucasians. Yeah. And so yeah, you just learn to embrace who you are. And with Haitians, I never really had to experience that with Haitians. It's like a thing where when I see a Haitian and I figure out that we find out that we're both Haitian, we embrace each other immediately because it's not a lot of us. So we'd be like,
I was
"Sakase,"
just about to say that, yeah.
right? And so I never really had to experience that with Haitians, thank God. But with
Mhm.
African Americans, it would definitely be the worst.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your honesty, and I think, it's funny, I can kind of feel and think of where people's where, because 'cause I'm part African American, so I get to say this for those who
Right.
are feeling some type of way. I get to do it because I am her,
Right.
okay?
Right,
But
right.
I too went through that of being called the white girl or
Right,
whatever, growing up by my own family. "Why you acting
right,
like that? You acting like you white."
right.
And, it's interesting because I've grappled with that growing up, and I know we're not the first, and we won't be the last to talk about it because I've seen, this conversation come up over time, especially in the teens of the 2000s, I feel like. Um, and there's 2 things that I'll say to it. I think it is important, okay, maybe 3, but I think it is important to think about your whys. So,
Mhm.
when you said that, you thought about like, "Well, why do I do this? Why?" I think that's great. I'm very much of a why person, but you
Right,
can't get stuck at the why. That's the second part.
right,
You can't get stuck
right.
at the why because sometimes I'll get stuck there and it's like, "Well, this is why." And it's
For
like, "Well,
sure. Yeah, that's good.
we don't
More
have
of
to
that.
stop there." You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right,
Like totally separate situation, but God's been showing me this year the boundary thing, which is I'll go like if someone's punching me in my face, and I've used this as the example a few times, but like if someone's punching me in my face, I'll go into, well, I bet this happened when they were young, or I bet someone else did this to them, or like I'm going into the why
right, right,
instead of
right,
like, okay, this is just not okay. But my point is like on a personal level, I'm very much a why person anyway. Like I just
right.
love the whys of things, the reasons for things. But again, you can't get stuck there. You have to move past it, change it, or embrace it.
Exactly,
Whatever God is telling
exactly.
you to do.
Right,
Um, and so a lot of that did have to do with me being raised in a all white, predominantly white state,
right.
but not really realizing it. Honestly, I felt like I was mainly around African Americans my entire life, or Nigerians, honestly, until people told me like, this is a white state, and right, like I kind of was like, oh really, because I'm always
Mm,
around Black people at school. Like my
right,
schools are very diverse. It's Black, white, Asian, Ethiopian, Russian, all of it.
right, right,
um
right.
And then I go home, I got a big family, everybody's Black, obviously, and then I'm going to the African parties, everybody's African, and,
Right,
I'm
right.
going to church, everybody's Black, so I'm just like, I
Right,
kind of
right.
was around Black people all the time,
Mhm.
so I didn't feel
Right.
that the sense, although I'll talk to my peers from Oregon, and they will say like, "Oh yeah, I felt like I was the only Black kid in class," and I was like, I didn't get that." But I get how that is some people's experience and situation. So
Right,
I
right.
I kind of wanted to just speak to that because I know that there are going to be, little boys and girls in the future who are going to, like, nothing's new under the sun. They're going to grapple with that and they're going to feel some type of way. The only bit of a pushback I have for that is not to you, but to the notion of talking white and things like that. Is I remember being in the 6th grade and getting in an argument with somebody about this and just saying something like, well, why do white people get to own, like, professionalism or
Right, right,
speaking a certain way?
right,
And then and I still agree with that. I still feel that way. And
right.
then later in college, I feel like, and a little after college, and being in Baltimore, I feel like Baltimore taught me this. Is why I love Baltimore so much. I feel like it pulled a lot of what was already in me
Right.
out. And one of those things being kind of like, well, African Americans, as we are all saying now, we weren't saying it before, but we had to create our own culture because it was
Yeah.
taken from us. So no one is saying to. It's interesting. I'm processing. Okay, so like,
Right, right,
I feel
right.
like no one is really saying to Asians or someone else from a different culture when they speak their language that they're saying it wrong.
Right,
Like, you
right,
might you might hear like, oh, broken English when they're trying to speak English, right?
right,
With maybe they're just learning, or they've got an accent, maybe that. Um, but I kind of just started grappling with like, well, what is there really isn't. I think there's not one right way in a way. And God, I'm always like, God, please correct me wherever I'm wrong. But like, I always was like, well, what's wrong with certain um I don't want to divvy too much, but
yeah,
yeah, there and I'm not saying for all of slang, because
right,
for me, evil is evil and good is good.
right.
And
Mhm,
whichever camp that is in is going to be pointed out.
mhm.
But I think I think sometimes I think about when I was in elementary school, and I remember my teacher saying, "Ain't isn't a word. You can't use that," and da 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 da. And now it very much is a word. I remember when I
Right,
first saw it on a commercial years ago, and I was like, "What?" I remember when I
yeah,
first heard a news anchor say it. I was like, "Wait, what?" Because the truth of the matter is, it's a part of a culture, and for me, I want to dig. I would dig into, okay. We could go so many directions, and I'm
yeah,
trying to like
yeah.
keep it in a certain like direction, but there's I think don't get stuck on the why. And I think if you're watching this and you feel that um, professionalism should not be kind of compared to, or unprofessional, that is, unprofessionalism should not be compared to Black culture. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, and I think
Right,
that's what happens a lot of times, and it
right.
frustrates
No,
me because
I
they're two different things. You can still be professional and be African American and not talk the way Europeans talk, or you can, and they both be right.
right, right.
If that makes sense, I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, reach out to me and come on the show and let's talk about it. But I really
Yeah,
just I didn't want to die. Wasn't trying to divvy off too much, but I often thought about stuff like that, especially in college. And I was trying to get that out. So, but speak to me. You talked about your calling a moment ago. Um, Whatever you feel comfortable sharing, of course. But speak to me about that calling. And in the intro, I failed to say that you are the founder of Faithfully Fit. Talk about your calling and talk about what Faithfully Fit means to you, um, and why you think God gave that to you to
Yeah.
birth.
Yeah, no. So, just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying before we moved on. Yeah, no, I wanted to say real quick is that I think that because of how um, the agenda of pushing, like you said, a certain way to talk and a certain way to, it even goes as deep as when we see, um, the different types of like African Americans not feeling comfortable with their natural hair, African Americans not being accepted with locks. With certain, we went through that era where people would
Yeah.
get fired or not hired because of the fact they had dreads or things like
Yeah.
that, right? So definitely also an agenda of the enemy to make it seem as if being African American and being authentic is shunned upon and it's not accepted. This is where we get, now we're seeing a time where we are being unapologetically black. Like we are not like we can talk slang, we can say ain't, we can say what you be doing and have a doctorate degree and be a PhD, doctor, be a professor, things like that. Code switching, right? We talk about code
Because that
switching.
doesn't reflect my intelligence. It's a
That doesn't
language. It's
reflect
really a language.
right. And I've met people, understanding diplomacies and diplomacy that is. And I've met people who know how to code switch in the sense. I know how to code switch because of my career. And I'm going to go into, Faithfully Fit training and other things that I do. But because of, my calling and where God has me and where he's directing me, I understand. I know that in certain settings, I talk certain ways. And it's because of understanding the environment I'm in, right? And I can be in a room full of doctors, and this has happened many times. I can be in a room full of doctors, professionals, people with high titles and prestige, and say something ingrammatically correct and laugh it off. And they look at me like, okay, sis knows what she's talking about. Right. But at the same time, I can also be in those settings and present myself well in the sense and also be seen as, oh, sis knows what she's talking about. Because at the end of the day, it's not only about, it's about confidence. It's
Mm,
about confidence. And um I know people who have no, you know, scholastic education in the sense when it comes to like a GED or a degree of any sort, who talk better even with the slang than those who have PhDs and master's degrees. Like what? So
mm,
I'll digress there. However, um, yes, my I do have my own Faithfully Fit training because I could go in on that. I do own training. It is a fitness, health, wellness, nutrition service here in Baltimore City, and I believe that I'm called to the mountain of health and business.
Mm,
And I believe that I'm called to help shift the mindset and the perspective on health overall as a people. As a people, meaning Black, African American descent,
mm,
we are number one in the categories for chronic disease. It is actually very scary in the sense because you see that we are leading in cardiovascular disease, which is the number one killer. Before COVID-19, it was the number one killer in America, and it has returned to the number one. And a lot who are affected by cardiovascular disease is Black people. And it's
mm,
because of how we eat, of course, the sedentary lifestyle. So it's a lot of things that play into it. But I know that the Lord has called me to be a voice, to be his voice. And, very radical about it. I have a passion for the industry. And I also have a passion for seeing my people excel in good health. And so, not only with health and wellness, but when it comes to the mountain of business, I am apostolic at heart. I believe in building systems and environments for people to thrive in. I want to see us thriving, not even just as Black people, but as believers. I believe that we are called to have multiple streams of income. It's not just working 9 to 5. I believe that we're called to build, and um, the Lord has put this desire in my heart to build cities, to build communities, to build organizations and companies to be able to provide um, sources of income for other people, those
Mm.
who would never be considered to be considered, right? And so, yeah, those are the two things that I believe that the Lord has pressed upon me to take and to conquer, and of course, some other areas as well. I'm into media and production. Um,
Hey.
yeah, I love media and production. I'm loving it more and more. And but more than anything, Yori, I believe that the Lord has called me to be a pioneer, to be like a
Mm.
door for His people, especially here in Baltimore City. I moved here in 2017, and I fell in love with the people immediately. I kid you not.
Yep.
Anytime a Baltimorean asks me, "Where are you from and why are you here?" And I tell each and every single one of them, I say, "I love it here. I love you guys." And they look
Love
at me
it.
like I got 10 heads. They're like, "We've never had
Mhm.
that before." And that's when I
Mhm.
knew that the Lord had called me here. Um,
Mhm.
because I absolutely love the people here. It's a lot of oppression. The streets of Baltimore are crying, it's bleeding. And so I know that it is a very weighty call, that an assignment that the Lord has placed on me, but I've given him my full yes on it, and I'm excited to be able to do his work.
Yeah. When God gives us a vision, he's actually given it to other people as well,
Right,
and kind of gonna place everything the way that he wants it, whether or not it's multiple people leading, one person leading, they're the arm, they're the leg, or whatever their role is for the vision. He hasn't just given it to you, and that's even more confirmation a lot of the times.
right, right.
When other people come along and they're like, I want to do that too, you too.
Yeah,
And so what the enemy does is he'll come in and he'll make it seem like there's competition and create jealousy
right,
and
that part.
all these things, and it's like, no, you're supposed to work together. And I remember saying at like one of my first business conferences years ago, I just remember thinking, I remember like always hearing like business and marketing is all about like, learn your competitors and da, 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 da. And I just always was like, why did it have to be competitors? Like I always was
Right,
just like, why is this my, and I remember I
right.
started
That's
to
good.
say, I don't want to see my competitors. I don't study competitors. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't do that. And people would look at me like, you don't have the right mind for business. You're not gonna make it. Like that's that's kind of the response I would get. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm not gonna make it then because I just don't.
Right, right.
And now, fast forward, everyone is kind of having that mindset now. And I love it. It's all about
It's
collaboration and it's all about
collaborative.
coming
Yeah,
together. Cause it's like we don't have to do dog eats dog. That is what America told us we had to
right,
do.
right.
And if I go even further, I know that really ain't going like this, but this whole idea of American ingenuity is is fighting each other for each other's stuff
Right,
and taking
right.
and feeling like, oh, this is my domain, you can't have
Mhm.
this. Um, ooh, I'm not even going, ooh, that is, we're gonna put a
It's
pin in that because
right.
I can really get and I will say this real quick. Actually, I am gonna say it. At first, I was like, I'm not cool. I'm gonna say it. I worked on a project that confirmed the very thing that I just said and that I was thinking. And in the project, it was my job to do selects, as we call it, where you're selecting like the best parts that we're gonna keep.
Mhm.
And in the selects, someone literally said, "Oh, American ingenuity. They were the four founders of people who did this and that." And then later on, they're talking about, "Oh yeah, they had this idea and then they took it from that person and elaborated on it and called it American ingenuity." And I thought, okay, you are proving my point.
Right, right.
This country is literally, it feels like it's just been built on just literal just like lies and just like, oh, I'm gonna grab this and I'm gonna take this. Oh, I'm gonna do it better than them. I see, and it's nothing wrong with saying, you know, you know, they have a t-shirt business, I want one too. Yeah, sure, you can do that. But to literally take from someone else's t-shirt business and say, I'm going to take these pieces of it, make sure their business does not thrive and
Right,
make sure mine does,
right.
that's a problem.
Exactly. No, that's a big problem. It's a big problem. And we're like you said, I love how you said this, like this is this year was prophesied as a year of collaboration. And
Mm,
people are seeing more and more, especially um in business, that it is important to collaborate. We cannot do anything by ourselves. Like even the foundation and the establishment of this country, when you really want to think about it, outside of the lies and the deception, was established through a group of, we call them the founding fathers. We don't say
mhm,
founding father, right?
mm,
And so when
mm,
we're talking about and this was a thing for me that I had to learn in comparison, because what I'll go back to what I mentioned earlier is about division, right? Causing division, and that's what the plan is to do, is to cause division. However,
mhm,
I've noticed more than anything, and it's a biblical concept, when there is unity, there is so much more success. And
mhm,
it's
mhm,
guaranteed that there will be success, because the word of God in Ephesians says that we are a body. So there
mm,
a body has a head, eyes, arms, legs, torso, whatever, right? And in order for a body to function, you need, imagine if a body was all eyes.
mm,
Imagine if a
mm,
body was all legs. Would it be able to function
mm,
well? No, it's not a body anymore, right? And
mhm,
so, and it's the same principle concept, the same biblical principle concept of the body and the church and how it should be ran, is how it works in the real world as well, in the secular world. Believe it or not, they don't even realize that they're operating under biblical concepts.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. So overall, what I'm trying to say is that it's important in the business world that we're not, segregating ourselves and isolating ourselves, and just focusing on, that comparison. We're not looking at ourselves, because you mentioned something really good. We're not looking at ourselves and putting ourselves in the position to be better and do better, just so that the other, unless it's wicked, unless what we're doing
Mm,
in comparison to someone is the same, but they're doing something wicked, right? And they're doing
mm,
something evil, that we're not trying to wipe them out. Instead of wiping them out, we're like, okay, guys, we're doing the same thing here. How can we collaborate? And how can we, because when we're talking about impact, it's a whole different, because what we do as believers, we don't do for ourselves, we do it for the kingdom of God. And so
mm,
it's about impacting the kingdom of God, right? And so um, when we're talking about collaboration, it's important that we're trying to impact and bring as many people into the kingdom of God as we possibly can. And so if that means, you know, having my business, Faithfully Fit Training, and then partnering with a media company, right? Or another entity that does the same thing that I do, that believes in the same morale, that has the same values, core values, that we're partnering together. Now, when it's two different entities in the sense of their beliefs, like for example, Faithfully Fit Training being a Christian based Christian influenced business, and a secular business that, maybe their owner or founder doesn't believe in God. Do I avoid collaboration? I don't know, because I
mm,
also see that as a door to,
mm.
spread the gospel, and to impact. We're to be a light, and even when I think about what God has called me to do,
That's good.
that's at the forefront, right?
That's good.
Yeah, we're to be a light, and so in many ways, that is a form of evangelism. It's a form of spreading the word of God, and yeah, I'm big on collaboration. I'm big on
Yeah.
collaboration. I just love people in general too. So my heart
Yeah.
is to how can I help you? How can I
Yeah.
help you?
Yeah.
And after, we talk about ways I can help you and benefit you, how can you help me? Right? How can we
Mhm.
feed off of
Help
each
each
other,
other.
build together at the end of it all, right? And so, yeah,
Yeah.
everyone, yeah,
Exactly. And
yeah.
I actually I think this is my first time publicly saying this. I've said this to people offline. The bartering system, I actually think that we're moving in that. I feel like God showed me that. I think last year I have to, look at my journals, but I think we're moving in that direction. Almost like literally going back to the trading system. And
Right.
not only, but in addition to currency. I think
Right.
it will be a way of currency and be a little more common than we think. Um, and that's
I see
that's the
that.
other thing that I was gonna say, you know, it's just not a coincidence that there's this huge surge of entrepreneurships and entrepreneurs and huge surge of Christians being bold. I feel like that's what I've seen personally. I was like literally counting it all last year, seeing so many bold Christians in the entertainment business, black, white alike, and I was just like, and it was God's way of saying, "See, girl, like you don't like, come on."
Right. Right.
And um and it was just beautiful to see because people were just being themselves, right? And that's what he told me when I moved here. He told me just be
Yourself.
yourself.
Yeah.
You're on the offense now. And I remember when I
That's,
told a few people that, they were like, "What does that mean?" And I feel like I hear a lot of churches say that now.
yes.
God was like, "You're on the offense. You're
That's
not
so
on the
powerful.
defense
Yeah.
anymore." And I equated that with like region, like, oh, well, I'm in a different state now, or, it was multiple things. It's timing as well. And I was right before COVID. So it was a
Mhm.
lot of stuff he was saying to me about that. And I was like, huh, okay. And so being on the offense really is just being yourself. And if my identity is being a Christian, that's me being myself. And so I
Right.
saw all these beautiful examples of Christians like doing their thing, being their self, but being so bold and out loud on
Right.
certain
Right.
platforms. And I was like shook by that, like pleasantly shook. And I say that to couple with the entrepreneurship is because God wa- God does want us to have our own. It's
Okay.
really important, and he's already said it.
Mhm.
But like we have to have our own, and I feel
Yeah.
like we use the Jewish community as that example all the time. But he's saying that for the kingdom, it's not just for Jews, it's not just for the Asian economy and the Black economy. It is for
The
the
kingdom.
kingdom of light economy.
Yeah.
It is for our economy, and um, I think a moment ago offline, we were just talking about how like technology sometimes it's just like this hate and love relationship. And for me, it's been majority hate than love. But God had to God had to remind me like I'm the God of technology too. I'm over all that. You know what I'm saying? I'm the God over all that. Like the enemy thinks he's the prince of the air, and then that includes like sound waves. I won't get into all that, but I'm over all of that. Don't ever get it twisted.
Right. Right.
And if he is, then that means we should be using that tool. And we
Right.
do have to go along with the times and not get stuck. I was working on a project for a client, and they kept talking about like, and these are, people who are in their 40s and 50s, saying things like we have to, be people who go along with the times and not get like stuck and stuff like that. And I was like, man, that's good. That was for me because sometimes I'll get stuck and I'm just like, this is it's too much. And next thing you know, it's gonna be one world, and they want, we know where this is going. And I'm like, I'm not signing up for no, mark of the beast or anything else that is to come. But if we are proactive and go along with the times and be influential and be the light, and have our own
Mhm.
and move in boldness, we won't have to go outside for a different we won't have to say, oh, I need to go here to get my job to be able to fend for myself or to be able to
Right.
survive, right? We won't have to do all of that because we'll have our own. So we
Right.
do need Christians to be the doctors and the lawyers and um, be in all of these respective spaces, because that is how God is spreading his kingdom and his dominion. Um,
Yeah. That's good.
there's so much. So
Yeah.
that I'll leave it there. And that's this past year seeing Christians do that, especially in entertainment and in production. That was just like whoa for me, and is allowing me to even say what I'm saying right now so boldly. Like I wouldn't have said some of this stuff, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's
I'll
good.
say it definitely in certain spaces, but publicly like this, no.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's so powerful. Yeah, and I think about as you're saying that, I think about the Acts church, right? And how um the Acts church, they did everything together. They served
Mm,
each other. They brought resources to the temple, to the house of God. No one was without. And
mm,
as believers, I believe that even we can be, because we're in a time where we're chasing platforms and we're chasing titles and within the church itself. And so if we're talking about like collaboration, you got churches, you got 7, 8, 9 churches in one region, and they don't even talk to each other. No one knows what the
mm,
other is doing, right? They're not collaborating.
mm,
We're not impacting the community together. And so, yeah, anytime I read the book of Acts and I hear about how, it talks about Acts is obviously of the Holy Spirit talks about the establishment of the church and how the disciples were commissioned and what exactly was done and how they traveled different regions, but they funded each other's, travels.
mm,
They did everything together. They did
mhm,
everything together. And
mm,
I love it as one that I know eventually will be in ministry heavily. I was like, man, I love this. I love it.
mm,
And so, yeah, I think, excuse me. I think we're starting to see that as believers, the importance of unity. Back to what circling back to what I said initially, and it's important that we understand that because it was hard for me to grasp it. My eyes have been open to it more and more, the importance of it, and even my role where I play in making sure that um, I'm embracing my part of the body, right,
mhm,
and not devaluing who I am and not devaluing my
mm,
gift, allowing the
mm.
Lord to
My goodness.
reveal who I am through him and why he created me. And so, yeah, it's very important that we're not segregating or isolating ourselves as believers because the task requires, as Nehemiah was building, he had many people building with him. It wasn't a thing of him building by himself. Imagine
Mhm.
if he built by himself. There's no way he would have gotten the wall rebuilt. There's no way. Um, and so it's important to have people with you building. It's important to, especially as believers.
Yep,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, I'm really glad, I'm so glad that, you were open, and accepting to come back on the show. Insider for the 3rd time, but we're not gonna get into the details, but, um, I really, really do appreciate you, saying yes, like, of course, and almost like no-brainer and even encouraging, the shift and the pivot. I really do appreciate you coming on, and, I always, like I said in your intro, I really do love how well-rounded you are. I feel like you are, spiritually fit, physically fit, like, in the natural and spiritual, like, all around, and that's really, really important, especially, like you just said, for our community, and I'm so glad that God gave you, that calling, and I'm glad to know you.
Mm.
Um, Especially when you get big, so I could be like, "I knew her already, so y'all need to just relax. I already knew Frenchie. You don't even know the nickname. Get out of here."
All
No.
right.
No, but really, I really am, grateful to know you and to have the conversations that we have
Yeah.
and to sharpen each other and to grow with each other and to affirm each other. I love it. I
Yeah.
absolutely love who you are and who God is calling you to be and all the amazing success that you have been able to um accomplish.
Thank you so much. It means the world to me coming from you because I remember there's a story between me and Yori when we first met. Do you remember this?
Wait,
So
wait, wait, wait.
you remember
Okay.
this? So you probably don't remember this, but When we first met each other, I told you I thought you didn't like me. Didn't I tell you that? It was you and our friend Emily. I just knew you and Emily hated me. Emily, I legitimately chased. I chased Emily. Like I was like, no, you gonna be my friend.
So
I like
funny that you
we
said
laugh
that.
about it every time now. And
I don't I'm
you
not
don't
sure
remember
that
that?
I remember. I feel
Me
like
me
I'm so
you.
used to like having the conversation, at least going back, like how do we meet? Da, da, da. And like at least having that. I'm not even. I cannot remember.
I remember you just always like kind of like discerning me. And I just be like, man, what's wrong? But I think what broke the ice with us is that because I laugh at everything, and I thought you were Yori is the most funniest. I would just be laughing at you the entire time at gatherings. And that kind of broke the ice because you were like, you were always laughing with me. And I was like, because you are funny. Like I would laugh at everything you would do, and we would just be all busting out laughing. And especially me and you. And then it just clicked. Like I think the Lord just kind of opened the door, and I was just like, I knew I was meant to be friends with this woman. And then you
Mm,
hired me as a personal trainer, and the story goes on. But
yeah.
it means the world to me to one, I thank you for those words because you just don't even know how timely those words are
Mm,
in the
mm,
season for me right now. But I also the sentiments are, reciprocal. I think so highly of you. And I one of the things that I love about you more than anything is your tenacity. You're very tenacious. You
mm,
persevere well, and
mm.
it's inspiring. It truly is for you to
Ooh.
move to California, and to continue to press through, and to have that I'm not giving up, Lord, until your promise comes to pass. I'm extremely proud of you. I'm
Oh.
extremely proud of you, and I knew that even with you being in California, that I would try my best to stay connected with you. So when you blow up, don't you forget. I'll be like, hey, I'm in Cali. Where are you at?
Not
Look
where
me
you at.
up. And I need to take a trip. I need to come visit you. And
I would
and
love that.
soon. I do plan to do that. I won't let that go. I have going through a lot of transition, so I haven't been able to visit people in general, but I do plan to come see you. So
I
thank
would
you for having
absolutely
me
love that.
on. Like
Yeah.
this is so amazing. So thank you.
No,
Yeah.
I don't know how you call me funny. I just think I'm super corny and cheesy. And it's just like if you get it,
You're
cool. If
just
you don't, I
you.
don't know what to
You're
tell you.
you. You're you. And I think that's one of the things that I love about you the most. I was like,
Mm.
Yori is just, you were always going to say something, no matter what. It was like I was
I don't know if
waiting.
that's a compliment.
It was a compliment for me because I would always be like, Yori finna say something. And I'd be like, what's she gonna say? And you would say something really funny, and I would just bust out laughing
You
because
were
I was like, I knew she was gonna say something.
That's hilarious. Wow. Oh my gosh, there's so many things that I need to now talk to you offline, friend to friend. So,
For
ooh,
sure.
oh my goodness, you're hilarious. Oh, I love you, Frenchie,
I love you as
Alexandra.
well.
You
I love
are amazing. Thank you so much for coming and talking with me and
thank
being
you.
a guest on Unpopular.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me.